In real life, the last samurai, Saigo Takamori, did not fight together, but against Jules Brunet in Boshin War. But again, they were both compassionate military leaders who gave everything and fought for their men through a battle they knew they couldn't win. 皆さんこんにちは and welcome to Let's Ask Shogo. One of the most popular and famous samurai movies of all time is surely The Last Samurai. Those of you who have enjoyed watching this movie know that Tom Cruise or an American soldier was not the real samurai, right? It's kind of like an all-time classic joke, saying that the last samurai is Tom Cruise. But then, who was the real last samurai, and did such a foreign soldier exist? So today, as a Japanese katana trainee studying about samurai history every day, I will introduce the story of the French soldier Jules Brunet, who fought alongside the samurai through the civil wars in the 19th century, and the real last samurai, Saigo Takamori, who helped Japan move forward towards modernization but led a very tragic end. You will find out that the model of Nathan Algren and the model of Katsumoto were not allies, but were actually enemies during the wars. Also, at the end of the video, I would like to introduce 3 more people whose names were used in the names of the characters that appear in the movie: Katsumoto, Nobutada, and Omura. And even if you get confused somewhere during the middle, that's okay. I will wrap everything up again at the end of the video in today's conclusion. それでは本日も参りましょう。First of all, let's briefly understand the historical background of the 19th century, which was the time of westernization in Japan. The third and last Edo shogunate lasted for 265 years. And for most of its history, it was very peaceful with hardly any wars. Such a long term of peace was realized thanks to the clever and strict political measures that the government took to keep order within the country. For example, creating a strict class system among the people, teaching them that they must obey superiors through Confucianism, keeping the samurai poor to prevent them from overthrowing the government, and etc. Also, the shogunate restricted the amount of trade with foreign countries and forbade Japanese people from leaving the country. However, in 1853, the US Navy came to Japan with their latest technology and weaponry and threatened the government to open their ports for them to use. The government easily signed a contract with the US, letting them use their ports approved of consular court and waived customs autonomy. The samurai, especially in the lower class, were unsatisfied and became angry that the government they had obeyed for generations were such cowards. Some formal samurai clans united to overthrow the government, and after the Boshin War, they succeeded in establishing a new westernized government. However, the civil wars of the 19th century did not end here. Once the Meiji government started to take over, they immediately laid out rules and political measures to modernize Japan. They abolished the old samurai clan system, prohibited people from carrying katana swords outside, and began conscription to train everyone to be a soldier. Yes, all 3 of these new laws meant that the former samurai who were in the top class of society would lose all of their privileges and become a normal citizen. There were many former samurai who agreed to destroy the old shogunate, but were not expecting such rapid change in society. The anger and frustrations grew larger and larger, and eventually led to them starting the Second Civil War, Seinan War. The story of the last samurai is based on this battle. Next, let's take a closer look at the lives of the French soldier Jules Brunet, who fought in the Boshin War with the old shogunate, and the real last samurai Saigo Takamori, who led the formal samurai to fight with the new government in the Seinan War. Then, let's start from the story of Jules Brunet, the model of Nathan Algren. Jules Brunet was born in eastern France in 1838. After he studied at a military academy, he became a second lieutenant in the Army Artillery. He played an active part in the second French intervention in Mexico in 1862 and achieved the Legion of Honor at a young age of 24. Why did such elite military personnel like him come to Japan? The shogunate especially had a good relationship with France at that time, and they even followed their military and legal system. In order to train their men into a strong, modernized army, the shogunate invited a total of 19 military advisors from France to Japan in 1866. Jules Brunet was one of these men. Jules Brunet trained a Japanese army of 3,000 men for about a year, until they were called Japan's strongest unit. However, right after the year of training, the Boshin War against the old shogunate and the new westernized government began. Jules Brunet and the other military leaders insisted on a thorough fight against the new government. However, the shogun Tokugawa Yoshinobu rejects this claim and confined himself. France immediately orders Jules Brunet and the other military advisors to come home. However, Jules Brunet rejects this order, and he leaves a letter of resignation to his superior officer. The shogun leader might have given up the war, but some of the enemies of the new government were not going to forgive the soldiers, but were planning on eradicating the whole opposing power. I can't just abandon my men I've trained. I must fight together with them. Jules Brunet was willing to fight and die with his men, even if it meant betraying his own country. He heads to the northeastern region of Japan, where the old shogunate's army has been retreating to, and joined battle command in various places. However, their efforts were all easily crushed by the new government, who were superior in number and firepower. The Japanese soldiers could not let Jules Brunet die with them, who had shown such kindness and bravery. After much negotiation, Jules Brunet followed the order of the men to return to France. Back in France, Jules Brunet was sent to trial, but there were many people who admired his attitude of quitting the French army before joining the war in order to avoid troubling them. Jules Brunet was eventually allowed to work for the French army again, and after playing an active part in the Franco-Prussian War, he became the chief of the General Staff Office. He passed away in 1911 when he was 74 years old, but it is said until his last years, he took care of Japanese students who had come to France to study abroad. Next, let's take a look at the story of Saigo Takamori, the model of Katsumoto Moritsugu. Saigo was born in a poor, low-class samurai family in the Satsuma clan, located in Kumamoto Prefecture today. Although he was raised by a poor family, he was well educated and trained with swords too, standing out from others from an early age. His talents, honesty, and straight heart was eventually recognized by the clan lord, and he was very lucky to serve him as his bodyguard and secretary. He was able to engage in important political events and expand his connection with people through the political world. This is how, after his lord passed away, he became the commander-in-chief of the army and chief of diplomacy of his clan. Originally, his clan was fighting the Ronins who were trying to defeat the shogunate, but eventually started to agree with and feel more empathy towards the Ronins, leading to forming an alliance with them. With the help of Saigo's clan, the Ronins, who were originally losing to the shogunate, started to win the wars. And finally, they were able to establish the new Meiji government under the emperor. Saigo also led the Boshin War against the old shogunate, which means he was on the side fighting against Jules Brunet. After the new government took power, Saigo worked to enforce the abolishment of the samurai clans and established the prefecture system today. However, Saigo eventually started to quarrel with other politicians over diplomatic issues and ended up returning to his hometown in Kumamoto Prefecture. Those who admired Saigo or had complaints against the new government's policies to rapidly abolish the samurai system came with them. Saigo did everything he could to try to suppress their anger by establishing schools and creating their community. But in the end, he couldn't stop them from starting a rebellion. This was how the last civil war in Japan, the Seinan War, started in 1877. However, the rebellionists did not stand a chance against the new government's army and their latest weaponry, and the war was over within half a year. After being completely surrounded by his enemies, Saigo Takamori committed seppuku to end his life. Many people point out that as a military professional, Saigo Takamori must have known that there was no way to win against the new government. However, just like Jules Brunet, he was a very compassionate and caring person, and he couldn't just abandon his men who trusted and adored him. If you have watched The Last Samurai before, you can understand that the story of the movie is a mixture of the two wars, Boshin War and Seinan War. In real life, The Last Samurai, Saigo Takamori, did not fight together, but against Jules Brunet in Boshin War. But again, they were both compassionate military leaders who gave everything and fought for their men through a battle they knew they couldn't win. Then lastly, let's talk about the three characters that appear in The Last Samurai. Katsumoto, the leader of the samurai, his son, Nobutada, and the businessman, Omura, that first hires Nathan Algren to Japan. Their names are taken from famous people that actually existed in Japanese history. So, before we end, let me quickly introduce these three men to you too. By the way, there are of course multiple men who share the same name throughout history. So here, I'll be introducing the most famous ones. 1. Hosokawa Katsumoto. 2. Oda Nobutada. 3. Omura Masujiro. 1. Hosokawa Katsumoto. In the movie The Last Samurai, Katsumoto is the family name, but this samurai has Katsumoto as his first name. Hosokawa Katsumoto was a samurai of the Hosokawa family, which was one of the three most powerful subordinates under the shogun during the Muromachi period. He fought through the Onin War, one of Japanese history's most famous wars that caused the Muromachi shogunate to end. The Onin War is basically known as a domestic conflict about whether the next shogun should be the shogun's younger brother or his son. But it was actually much more complicated with the Hosokawa family trying to destroy the other powerful families of the Muromachi shogunate. Although most Japanese are taught that Hosokawa Katsumoto was just a talented politician and military leader, he also studied a lot about Zen Buddhism and Confucianism. He was the one that built the famous Zen temple with the Zen garden, Ryoanji, in Kyoto in 1450, which is actually my favorite Zen temple in Kyoto. 2. Oda Nobutada. Let's move a little forward into the Sengoku era, the period after the Muromachi shogunate lost its power in the Onin War. Probably the most famous samurai warlord in Japanese history. Oda Nobunaga, aka the Devil, was defeating other samurai clans with his powerful army and intelligent political measures. If you find the most bad A-looking character in Japanese historical video games, with a huge sword and gun covered in dark aura, that's probably Oda Nobunaga. Even if you have heard about Oda Nobunaga before, you might haven't heard about his son, Oda Nobutada. Although he is not as famous compared to his father's glory, Nobutada was also a super talented warrior, basically winning in every battle that his father sent him to fight in. He was recognized as the successor and became the second head of the Oda clan when his father Nobunaga was still alive. So you can understand how high his father's expectations were towards him. However, his glory, just like his father's, doesn't last very long either. Oda Nobunaga is famous for being assassinated by one of his most trusted subordinates, who burnt down the Honno temple where Nobunaga was staying. On the night when his father was killed, Nobutada was also attacked, and he fought against an army of 10,000 enemies, with just a few of his men for more than an hour. However, he eventually committed seppuku to avoid taking the dishonor of being killed by the hands of a traitor. This is how the once prosperous father and son both ended their lives in a single night. 3. Omura Masujiro. This man was actually alive during the same time as Jules Brunet and Saigo Takamori, so we move forth a lot into the future. Although he was just a city doctor, he was very passionate to study Western knowledge, and his talents and skills were eventually admitted by his clan. Earlier, when I talked about the story of Saigo Takamori, I said that Saigo eventually formed an alliance with the Ronins that were trying to overthrow the government, so they could start a new government together, right? Omura Masujiro was on the Ronin side at this time as a military leader. Thanks to the help of Saigo, Omura's clan was able to establish the new government. Omura led his clan to victory in many wars, and succeeded in defeating the old shogunate's army that had retreated to northeast Japan. Which means that Omura Masujiro was also one of the men that fought with Jules Brunet and his men. So you can understand that Omura in the movie and the real-life Omura actually have quite a lot in common. Many admired him as he was originally just a doctor, but became such a powerful leader. And some say that his fame was as big as that of Saigo Takamori. As I've explained in the beginning of this video, the new government led 3 political measures to end the samurai system and modernize Japan. The abolition of the class system, the restriction of holding katana, and conscription order. Saigo Takamori led the abolition of the clan system, but Omura was responsible for the conscription order. Unfortunately, this led to the end of his life. One day, when he was spending a night in Kyoto, he was attacked and killed by those who were against the new government's policies. However, the system that Omura created lasted until the end of World War II, so you can understand how big his influence was in the Japanese military. By the way, there are still some statues where Omura was killed in Kyoto. So if you have a chance to visit Kyoto someday, I hope you can take some time to see it during your stay. Then lastly, today's conclusion. The end of the 19th century was a turbulent time of civil wars, fighting to decide how Japan should face westernization and modernization. Some of the samurai clans formed an alliance to overthrow the old shogunate through the Boshin War. Although they defeated the old administration and established a new westernized Meiji government, next, there were some complaints within the new administration about the political measures to completely abolish the samurai system. The anger of those against the policies started the civil war against the new government, which was the Seinan War in 1877. However, they did not stand a chance against the strong military power of the Meiji government, and the war ended within a year. Jules Brunet, the model of Nathan Algren, was a French military elite that came to Japan to train the shogunate's soldiers into a modernized army. After a year of training, the Boshin War started and the old shogunate was losing, so France ordered Jules Brunet to return. He rejects this order and chooses a path to fight along with his students, because he could not bear to just let his men die. However, the old shogunate eventually lost this war, and Jules Brunet agreed to return to France after much negotiation from the Japanese warriors. Back in France, Jules Brunet was able to work for the French army again, and in his final years, he took care of Japanese students who were studying abroad in France. Saigo Takamori, the model of Katsumoto Moritsugu, was a military commander of his Satsuma clan. He led his clan to form an alliance with the other clans who were trying to overthrow the shogunate, and they were able to win the Boshin War and build the new Meiji government. Saigo became one of the most powerful leaders of the new government, but he eventually starts to fight with the other politicians over diplomatic issues and leaves the government. Those who also had complaints against the new government gathered together, and they started the last civil war in Japan, the Seinan War. The war ended with them losing against the new government within a year, and Saigo Takamori committed seppuku to end his life. Although in real life, Jules Brunet and Saigo Takamori fought each other in war, they were both compassionate military leaders that put their men before themselves. Katsumoto, the leader of the samurai, his son Nobutada, and the businessman Omura that first hired Nathan Algren to Japan are names of men that actually existed in Japan. Hosokawa Katsumoto was a powerful samurai of the Muromachi period who fought in the Oni War as a talented military leader. He also built the famous Zen temple, Ryoan Temple in Kyoto. Oda Nobutada is the son of the most famous samurai warlord in Japanese history, Oda Nobunaga, who fought through the turbulent Sengoku War era. He was as talented as his father, winning in almost every battle that his father sent him, and became the second head of the Oda clan. However, he committed seppuku at the time when his father was betrayed and killed by a traitor's subordinate. Omura Masujiro was a military leader of the clan that was first trying to overthrow the shogunate in the 19th century. With the help of Saigo Takamori, his clan was able to win against the old shogunate through the Boshin War, and he also became a powerful leader within the new Meiji government. However, when he was working to promote conscription order within Japan, he was killed in Kyoto by a group of men who were against policies of the new government. Although he died, the military system and facilities that he created lasted until the end of World War II. So that's it for today. Thank you very much for watching. If this video made you want to watch the movie The Last Samurai again, please hit the like button to let me know. And my goal is to achieve 1 million subscribers by January 2023, so your help would mean a lot. In this channel, you can take a closer look at Japanese traditional culture, tips on traveling to Kyoto, and social problems in Japan. So learners and lovers of Japanese language and culture, be sure to subscribe to enjoy more content. And if you'd like to learn more about today's topic, please take a look at my sub-channel Shogo's podcast through the link inside the description box. I would like to add a few stories of Jules Brunet and Saigo Takamori that might make the story even more interesting. Thanks again, and I'll see you in my next video. どうもありがとうございました。